fifth graders, and welcome to Social Studies, now that will be online. I am so excited to be here with you, and we are going to get started. We're actually going to do some review and go over some map skills before we move on to new content. Now, something that's important to learn is definitely map skills. How many of you use Google Maps to get anywhere? Or your parents use Google Maps? Or you have to find how to get somewhere? We have to use maps. Now, one thing to think about is how maps have changed from the 1500s to 2020. It's come a long way. So here are some basics that I'd like you to review. And the schedule for today is that we're going to spend a few minutes reviewing, and then at the end, you're going to need some paper and a pencil to help unscramble some of the continents and oceans to make sure that we are understanding our basic map skills and so that we can move on to the next set. So here is our lesson 1 of map skills. So our learning intention for today. We are reviewing key map terms so that we can successfully label the 5 oceans and 7 continents. It is very important that we know all 5 oceans and all 7 continents so that we know, well, where we are, what continent we live on, and if you ever want to travel in the future, where you would want to go. So let's use some think time. Why are these map tools helpful to us? And what is the purpose of the scale? We've seen some scales in math as we've done math this year. And what is the purpose? So let's review some of these math tools. We have a title that tells us what our map is going to show us. We have our compass rose, which is north, east, south, and west. And sometimes you may notice that the compass rose does not always point north. Sometimes it points in a different direction. North is not always up, which is very key. Another important is our symbols and map legend. So over here, it tells us, what do these symbols mean? What is that blue squiggly line? You might infer that it's water, which would probably be accurate, but it also tells us, the trail number, the picnic area, the climbing area. Another important thing is our scale. So that tells us, how big is this map? Obviously, this is not accurate. The United States is not that small. It does not fit on a Google slide. So this tells us how long the map scale is. So be ready to answer, why are these tools helpful? And what is the purpose of the scale? Feel free to go ahead and pause me at any time so that you can answer those questions so that you can be ready to discuss with your teacher next time you meet with him or her. So here is one example of a map. This is good old Kansas. So this map shows us our state. Now some things we see automatically over here is the compass rose. So on this map, north is pointed up. Okay. We can fill in that this would be east and south and west. Now we can also see Topeka. That's where we live. It's also the capital of Kansas. That's why it has a little red star. You can see some other cities that you probably recognize, like Kansas City. We have Manhattan. Wichita is actually the biggest city in our state. And look, right down here, we have the scale. So that tells us that for that amount of measurement equals 40 miles. So it is very important that we know what the scale represents. So here is a map of the United States. Now we have some more things that we can talk about here. We have a legend. That tells us what these things represent. So again, here is Kansas, and Topeka has a star because it is a state capital. So here we can see that this color of line is a state boundary, the grayish color. The red is a major road. Obviously, it's not all the roads in the United States. And the blue is the major rivers. Now, the national capital would be Washington, D.C., which is right there. State capitals we'll see in every single state. You can even see that Alaska and Hawaii has their state capital represented. And here we have another scale. Now we have this measurement, which would equal 300 miles, which is a little different than our Kansas map, which was 40 miles. So it's pretty interesting that you could see the different capitals on this map. So this little red line, I'm sure most of you have been on, this road would be I-70, which actually is a very long road, very important in the Midwest. Do you see any other places you might have visited, like maybe Denver? We also have St. Louis, Omaha, Oklahoma City. You might have family, in Texas or somewhere. This is important that we are able to read our maps. Now, here is a map of the world. So, it shows us all 7 continents and all 5 major oceans. And I know it's hard to read just because of the way the picture was, but I want to point out the scale over here. Now this represents 2,000 miles. So we've gone a long way from our 40-mile scale to our other scale in the United States, and then to 2,000 on our world map. So the United States of America, that's where we are. Kansas is about there-ish. And now we can see Hawaii is clear out here in the ocean, the Pacific Ocean. Alaska is also up here. Some other major countries you may have heard of is Canada, Mexico. This is all North America. Now, we refer to ourselves as Americans, but actually, we have North America here, and we have South America here. So, technically, all of these are North Americans or South Americans, depending on where they live. Here we have Africa, which has a lot of countries in it, as you can see from all the different colors. We have Europe, which has a lot of smaller countries, which are actually kind of the size of our states. We have Australia over here. Then we have Asia continent over here. And at the very southern, we have Antarctica. Now, the map makes it look very large because of the map. Obviously, the globe is round and not flat. So it's actually not as large as it may look, but Antarctica is clear down at the South Pole. So let's talk about longitude and latitude. Now, sometimes we get confused on which one goes which way. So I'm going to give you a little helpful tool for that. So right here we have the equator. The equator cuts our globe in half, okay? The equator lies flat, so that is our latitude. See how that works? Latitude is flat. So all of these lines running horizontal are our latitude, okay? So we either go north of the equator or we go south of the equator. So this is a southern line of latitude, okay? So equator lays flat, so it is our latitude, okay? Lat, flat. The other line, which isn't labeled, is our prime meridian. The prime meridian marks 0 for our longitude. Our longitude goes long ways. So these are our lines of longitude. So if this is our 0, then we either go west or east. So our longitude is measured in east or west of the prime meridian, okay? The long is the longitude. The flat is the lat, which is kind of confusing. But if you remember flat is lat, then you will remember that your longitude is long. To continue with that, here is how we measure. We actually measure it in degrees, not degrees like warm or cold, but degrees like north, south, east, or west. So on here, I've labeled for you the equator. Equator is flat, okay? And then our prime meridian is our long. So for example, if we wanted to measure where point B is on the map, how do we do so? Why don't you go ahead and pause me and see if you can go ahead and decide how you would measure point B. Hopefully you pause me and try that out. So here's a rough measurement. So first we measure our latitude, okay? So we would be 60 degrees north and 120 degrees west. It's kind of like a coordinate grid that we've used in math. So the way we would measure it is we would first go our north or south. So we go up to our 60 degrees north because we are north of the equator, and 120 degrees west because we are moving west of that prime meridian. So let's do one more example before we move on. So let's go ahead and do letter C. So why don't you go ahead and pause me and see if you can label measure C. Hopefully you gave that a shot. So let's see, we are north of the equator. So we are going to, again, be 60 degrees north, but now we are 60 degrees east. We are east of the prime meridian. So this would be 60 degrees north and 60 degrees east. So that's kind of how longitude and latitude work, and that should have hopefully been a review for you. So now let's move on to our learning intention for the day, which was to label our 7 continents and our 5 oceans. So I kind of already reviewed this earlier in the video, but we have our North America, and that's where we are. We live in North America. To the south, we have South America. Then we have Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, and Antarctica. Okay. Now, the oceans are also very important. We have the Pacific Ocean. The Arctic Ocean is actually at the North Pole. So, Antarctica is at the South Pole. Arctic Ocean is at the North Pole. Okay. Then we have the Atlantic Ocean, and it's actually on here twice. This is all the Atlantic Ocean. Then we have the Indian Ocean. That's between Africa, Asia, and Australia, the Indian Ocean. Because this is India, so that makes sense that the Indian Ocean would be close. The Pacific Ocean is labeled again. So remember, the Earth is round. So we are just showing that this Pacific Ocean and this Pacific Ocean, they meet. They're the same. Okay? And then we have the Southern Ocean down here by Antarctica. So that's going to be our goal today, is that you can label those 7 plus the 5 oceans. So before we go, one last thing we want to talk about is hemispheres. Now we've kind of been talking about that because the equator and the prime meridian actually separate our hemispheres. So in the middle, look, we have a compass rose to show you where north, east, south, and west is. So this red line is going to be our equator. Exactly. That goes flat, so it is our latitude. So the northern hemisphere is going to be to the north. See how that works? So the equator is kind of our line that guides us to cut the globe in half. We have our northern hemisphere above the equator, and then we have our southern hemisphere, which is below the equator. So that one probably makes a lot of sense to you. But over here we have the prime meridian. Okay, we talked about the prime meridian, which is how we measure our longitude. So if we follow our compass rose, what we have shadowed in is the western hemisphere. So that's how we measure our degrees to the west. And then on the other half, we have the eastern hemisphere, which is on the right of the globe at this point. So North America is in the north and western hemisphere. So we could divide the world into fourths if we really wanted to. So for example, South America is in the southern and western hemisphere. Okay? Asia is in the northern, eastern hemisphere. So that's how we kind of divide. We use those important lines of the equator and the prime meridian. So here's your task today, and I'll move out of the way. Your task is to unscramble the different continent names and the oceans. So they have given you numbers 1 through 12, and you are going to take those and you are going to unscramble the words. Now, not all of them are continents or oceans, some of them are countries. Now, keep that in mind. For example, number 5, if you look at number 5, okay, to me, that looks pretty close to United States. So the United States is a country, not a continent, okay? So the goal is for you to complete all 12 of these and unscramble all 12. And go ahead and write that on a piece of paper. And then you and your teacher can discuss it next time you meet. So thank you very much for coming to social studies today. I will see you soon in our next video. Thank you. Have a great day.